I want to introduce another subject that I feel is I've, I'm long overdue talking about. I really need to break my own discretion, sort of like the sexual assault video that I did. This is an issue that I think is grossly unvisited, and I, I think we've only, when we even mention it, we've only got the tip of the iceberg. So it's about, Asperger's syndrome, high function autism, and substance abuse. Okay? Substance abuse, self medicating, addiction, if you will. I find that addiction is a harsh word, but it's also a harsh reality because it's a product of what started out for a lot of people as self-medicating, and it becomes a self-medicating addiction. So my thing is that I'm reading this book, amazing book, only one of its kind, really, Asperger's syndrome and alcohol drinking to cope, by Matthew Tinsley and Sarah Hendricks. So this is a man that experienced alcoholism himself. He has Asperger's diagnosed, and it talks about, it gives a really concrete description of what Asperger's syndrome is and what a lot of the difficulties are, and how that relates to wanting to pick up, wanting to drink. In his case, it's alcohol, but there are different substances that people could misuse. Uh, you know, Particularly pills that relieve anxiety. Ativan, Valium, painkillers. If there's any kind of chronic pain, a lot of people with Asperger's and autism have autoimmune issues and may have chronic pain as well. That is our autistic brains have a hard time dealing with. So there's all these factors, but most importantly, it's centered around the difficulty in emotionally processing feelings and the social difficulties. Those are kind of the two big ones in terms of causing somebody to be pushed into the poor coping method of self-medicating. So what I wonder, and for what I know in my heart, is that a lot of people who end up suffering from addiction are on the spectrum. I'm not saying all of them, but a significant amount of people. I think, unfortunately, what happens is that the longer that they stay in their addiction, the more that the Asperger's gets masked by the addiction, and they may have used that coping mechanism for a while and before it got out of control, because addictions do spiral as a person builds tolerance, and it gets to the point that the person's life is unmanageable usually. But before that happens, the person probably succeeded in using that substance to cope with the challenges that are related to Asperger's syndrome. Like, because of the personality profiling, clinicians and people, once again, I've said it before, don't see Asperger's in anyone who doesn't have that obvious personality, the introverted, nerdy, goody two shoes type of personality that people expect from Asperger's syndrome, which is just a load of crap. I mean, people with Asperger's syndrome can actually be quite rebellious, and I know because I'm one of them. I'm a rebel, and I'm also, I am conventional in ways, and then I'm rebellious in some ways. I just don't like following. I'm a leader, and I don't like to just take things at face value. I question everything. So, and that can be good, and that can even be destructive, right? So I think a lot of people, a lot of Aspies are like that. And a lot of them are, very socially motivated and desire to connect with people and feel lonely. And the loneliness drives them to use something like booze to be able to handle a social situation. Environmental sensitivity too, just the sensory issues of being at a bar or a dinner or club or anything like that, where there's noises and people all around and visual stimuli all around. So the person, the aspie, may really desire to, connect and do that, feel lonely, feel they should know how to do that, feel ashamed that they are not naturally comfortable in that kind of situation, and turn to alcohol. So for me, alcohol was something that I used, starting as a teenager, young teenager, to cope with tons of changes. My family life was really unsettled and painful, and my life in general was very painful, and it was a struggle to kind of survive. And I don't know if I could have gotten, rather than melting down and ending up in the psych ward, I got drunk or stoned, because I because I was afraid that if I melted down, I guess I knew in my heart that I was not psychotic in any of the ways that I would have been seen and labeled as, and eventually did get seen and labeled as I started to, break down and in my alcoholism, ironically, when I was uh, drinking, when I got out of control, my emotions started to get really out of control, because that happens, it kind of backfires. The entire thing, the rug gets pulled from underneath you if an addiction kind of progresses, right? So in the end, and this isn't good, because a lot of people with Asperger's that will use self-medicating, it will backfire. It may initially slap a band-aid on the problem, but then people with Asperger's are very sensitive to emotional regulation and whatnot, and alcohol can offend that. So what's going to happen is a person who truly has Asperger's will get misdiagnosed with borderline or bipolar or some other psychiatric illness, mental health issue, because the alcohol is pushing on their emotional regulation sensitivity. So it's something that they get misdiagnosed, and when really what's really going on is you've got an aspie who's misusing alcohol to cope. So this is really something that I'm going to be talking a lot more about. I have to sort of break my silence. I really don't like talking about how my own personal history of substance misuse. Although I know that I shouldn't feel as ashamed as I do, because it's extremely common, a lot more common than we can even imagine. Somebody with an unknowing autism spectrum disorder self-medicating with alcohol or another substance that superficially works for them. Um, and so this is just so problematic, and I think it's one of the main reasons why adult aspies may not be getting diagnosed, is because many of them may have substance issues. A good portion of them may have substance issues that are masking the problem and creating other comorbid mental health issues. So, yeah, I really think this is I'm just touching on this subject right now, and there's a lot more to be said about it. This book is amazing. Um, when I read it, I loved Rudy Simone's book Aspergirls. It was very empowering, and it really helped corroborate my feelings and help me understand myself. But this book, it really just gives you the concrete truth about the disability, if you will, associated with having Asperger's syndrome. And it made me cry, because it made me realize, I know that a lot of us in the autism rights movement and the neurodiversity movements don't want to think about it as a disability, and I'm going to say diversability or diffability, like difference. It's a difference, but there are challenges, and that's because we are wired differently. Our brains are just wired differently to neurotypicals, and we're so bright that we can sort of figure out the world of neurotypicals in a way, and sort of intellectualize it, and that clashes with our natural inability to, be that way. And that's a hard line to walk, when with high functioning autism, that's the line we walk, and it's hard, it's painful, and no wonder people would resort to self-medicating, and I'm just saying that when I was a little girl, I didn't know what Asperger's was much really, other than you could be a little bit autistic, and it was like for boys. But when the word when I heard the word, I imagined somebody squinting in a haze, like an astigmatism, and it is like an astigmatism. We are like in a fog, because the way it works run by neurotypicals, it's just harder for us to understand. Maybe if we lived on our own Aspie planet, things would be different. But you know, it is in that sense, it is a disability in terms of integration with the world. Um, there are genuine difficulties in here that I read, and it makes me emotional. Social interaction, communication, and language. Difficulty reading nonverbal signals, body language, facial expression. On the surface, I speak really well, and I have, superficially masked all my difficulties. But truly, when I read this, I realize that I have these problems. I have these challenges, rather. These are all challenges that I face on a daily basis, and no wonder it takes me more energy to interact with people, even though I don't dislike interacting with people. I do get tired, because I have to decode things that I can't naturally pick up on. And I do a good job most of the time. I can't be perfect, I falter. But I mean, no wonder. I'm just so I'm lucky that I was able that that the my health and my mental health and my physical health couldn't handle using alcohol anymore in the end. It was something that I did at night. It wasn't a daytime round the clock kind of thing, but it was something where it was just not it was out of control, and it was done because I was overloaded and couldn't process emotions and socially anxious. Everything in here is why I drank. And used Ativan and Valium and whatnot, and eating disorder and all these things that I use to numb out and disassociate. So no wonder I did these things, but I was saying something. I said I'm lucky that my health couldn't handle it, and that I was able to have no choice but to stop. And when I stopped, it was painful because all of the real crap came out. All of my issues really came out from under the rug, all the dirt that had been swept under the rug. And through that journey, that's when I discovered that I have Asperger's, and that's what my problems always came from, rather than a mental illness or a personality problem or whatever. So yeah, I have to break my silence, because this is something that needs to be discussed. And I think a lot of people are suffering. And in fact, I've been in recovery groups and have mentioned Asperger's, and people have come to me and asked questions after the group. They've been extremely curious and feel that that fits them as well. So I really feel that this is a totally untapped issue that needs to be explored more, because I think it would prevent relapse. I think people go into recovery. They stop using their DOC, and all these problems come up for them, and then they're treated by the emotional reaction, superficially with counseling and whatnot. And it never does get discovered that these issues are coming from possibly an autism spectrum disorder. And because of the true nature of the problems don't get dealt with, the person is at a high risk to relapse. So I think it would be very preventative for people to gain this information. It would be hard in a way. It was hard for me to realize I have Asperger's and look at my past and go through all of it, to look back at everything and realize why I did what I did, or allowed people to do to me what I allowed them to do to me. But at the same time, you have to get through that, because those are where the answers are. The bulb of the onion is the Asperger's, and all the layers over top happen because the Asperger's never did get dealt with in childhood as it should have. So I think I'm gonna cry. I think this is something that people really need to hear. Love and light.